I'll ask it to you this way, Martin. If you had to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how likely it is that South Carolina wins their second consecutive national championship, where would you put that likelihood at?
If 10 is the most likely to do it, I would say I'm at around a 6. Yeah, I'm at around a 6. I think it's possible, but I'm not super confident. I
Sure.
think that they're vulnerable. I think losing Ashlyn Watkins just hurts their depth, and I think that Malaysia Fulwiley being their second leading scorer, but playing under 20 minutes a game, is something that I have repeatedly talked about. A lot of people continue to talk about, and we trust and should trust Dawn Staley to do things the way that she sees fit. She's a champion and a winner, and she's a leader, um, a proven leader, a proven winner.
Mm-hmm.
But until they really, I think I've been clocking this, and I think the way the team is set up now, losing that unfair advantage of Camilla, having lost Ashlyn Watkins, which takes a hit to their front line. I do think they still have the depth, but I don't see a clear direction in terms of who their best player is, who their best players are. And even though they don't tend to operate that way, and they operate as a system and as a team, offensively in particular, which, by the way, not to circle back, but USC, they're going to have to start getting more credit for their defense too, because even that stat line from Juju, the 8 blocks was the most impressive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they were 8 real blocks, like blocks on
Yeah,
Lauren
they were
Beck,
real
weak side blocks, helping, like rotating. I mean, they were like defensive IQ blocks. So from Juju to the whole USC team, that press that they put on, their size and their length, like, watch out for their defense, because it's not just all about their offense. Their defense seems to be legit as well. Well, we've been challenging if their offense is legit outside of Juju, but they seem to have a legit team defense. But yeah, I just think offensively, South Carolina is going to have some real challenges, and that's you've mentioned it, how watching them some possessions, you feel like they don't know where to go or what to do or who to go to. End of shot clock situations. Again, they don't have just the built-in like high-low unfair threat, 6-7 in there. Like, so watching them manufacture offense sometimes looks a little challenging. So they just look vulnerable to me. So I'm not super confident. I really, 6 is actually me being respectful, because from what I'm seeing, especially after the UConn game, I mean, how can you watch that and feel confident that this team is, again, they've only lost a few games. They went undefeated last year, so we're not comparing it to that. But just from what I'm seeing, the way they're set up, I just see them as being really vulnerable.
I have genuine concerns about South Carolina. I do. I
should.
wouldn't.
I mean,
I wouldn't be a real
just
fan if I
got
didn't sit here
smacked.
and tell you that I didn't have
Got
genuine
smacked,
concerns.
bro.
I think the big thing for me though is if you look at their numbers as a team statistically, and I'm a numbers guy, I'm a nerd, but they're rebounding and assisting, both of those stats per game has dropped. Not just from last season, not just from the season before that, and not just from the season before that. It has been a very long time since South Carolina's rebounds per game and assists per game has been as low as it's been. And a lot of that has to do with the lack of 6-7 disadvantage down low. When I look at this basketball team, it's more than just that too. It's a lot of things that you mentioned. It's, should we be concerned that a freshman is the leading scorer? No. Should I be concerned that a freshman averaging 13 points per game is a leading scorer? Absolutely. Because that doesn't make sense to me. It's hard for me to fathom that when you have a player in Raven Johnson who had an exceptional season last season. This season has not at all been the caliber of season that she had last season. And again, that could be for a lot of different reasons. But Raven Johnson, the big thing for her last season was she was shooting the 3 better and she was hitting shots when we needed them. She hasn't really been doing that this season. Tahina Paopao, she's still one of the best 3-point shooters in the country. Her 3-point percentage is still right around where it was last season. But again, the movement of the moving of the basketball the thing that made South Carolina great and the thing that made South Carolina virtually unstoppable last season was their ball movement and their ability to always find the open shot. And it seems like several times a game, the ball just stops moving. And I don't know why. I can't seem to fathom why. And yeah, we do have depth. It's not like this super great depth, but there is depth on this team. There's depth on this roster. There's good players on the bench. But if they're not getting the ball, then like that doesn't really matter. And so, like, do I have South Carolina in the Final Four? Yes. Is a lot of have to do with the fact that I know that they can turn this around? Absolutely. Because we've seen them, have moments in time previously where they looked a little bit questionable and they were able to kind of figure it out. I think last season, the big thing was there were so many close games for South Carolina where but they always found a way to figure it out and win them, obviously, because they went undefeated. But that was the big question last season, right? Can South Carolina get back to their dominant ways and blow teams out the water? Or are they just going to win a national championship on the strength of winning close games? And it turns out the answer to that question was they're going to win a national championship off the strength of winning close games. I think this season, the question for South Carolina is, can they get back to playing the physical style of basketball that has made them one of the best teams in the country the past couple seasons? Because right now, in every single game that you look at, you have to question whether or not they're going to be able to out-rebound their opponents, because they don't have a 6'7" big in Camila Cardoso anymore. They don't even have Aaliyah Boston anymore. Like, they don't have a player down low that is consistently crashing the boards and securing second, third, and fourth opportunities on offense, and they're not moving the basketball. And so for all the same reasons why I'm concerned about USC, to a degree, I am concerned about South Carolina. The difference between the two is I've seen South Carolina overcome similar struggles before, and that's why I'm holding out hope that they can still get back to the Final Four. I do agree with you, though. If I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a 6. Like, I'm not I'm not as confident as I was, 3-4 months ago that we were going to win a national championship. In fact, I'd be shocked if we win a national championship. I would probably be slightly more shocked, though, if we didn't make the Final Four, because the one thing that we've known about this team under Dawn Staley is no matter what the issue is, we've always been able to figure it out. And I think anything short of a Final Four appearance would mean that something went terribly wrong in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8, which means that something didn't get figured out between now and then. And that's the part that's really, really concerning me, is we've seen South Carolina get over things like this before. But for some reason, this feels like something that is going to be too big of a mountain to overcome and too big of a hill to climb. And I'm just holding out hope that they can, because you have the players and you have talent on this team where you should be able to. Like, we shouldn't be back to 2022 or 2023 where we're talking about Raven Johnson not taking shots in big moments, where we're talking about the ball not moving, where we're talking about certain players not doing the things that we're accustomed to seeing them do. And yet it seems like after winning a national championship and going undefeated, we've stepped back. So I'm hoping that we can get things together and start taking a step forward. But not making it to the Final Four, I think, will be a massive indictment on this team. And I think it would mean that for the first time, probably ever, under Dawn Staley, the South Carolina Gamecocks had an issue that they just quite frankly couldn't fix before the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it would be that big of an indictment, especially if they're in the Elite 8. Like, I mean, if they lose in the second round, I mean, I don't think making them.
But how you lose is also important too, though. Like,
for sure.
If they
I mean, if they get smacked,
that's what I'm saying. Like, if they get blasted in the Elite 8 and it looks exactly like how they looked on Sunday, they look uninterested, they look unengaged, and they just look like they don't belong on the floor. That's a massive concern to me.
That's an indictment.
That's a massive concern. You're right. If they lose on like a buzzer beater in the Elite 8, I'm not going to be like, I'll be distraught. We might not have
just not making the Final Four. Like, how you lose matters. Going back to what you mentioned about the difference between USC and South Carolina. And I give you experience and all that, and trusting Dawn Staley. I give you that. They have players that were on the national championship team last year. I give you that. I have USC in my Final Four, not South Carolina. You have South Carolina in your Final Four, not USC. Yep. What I'm pretty much banking on, and I have my concerns, but when you mentioned the difference between them, you failed to mention that one team has a generational player and one team does not. One team is relying on their freshman raw big to lead them in scoring, and they don't really have a player that they play through, and one team has a generational player that they know they're playing through. So to me, that does matter. Say what we want about system and experience and all that. Generational can matter in winning a lot of these games. In fact, I would love to see a USC South Carolina matchup. That would be a lot of fun. Because I just think in these games, like if memory serves me correct, the loss to Texas, South Carolina, I think it was like 66-62. So and I agree with you that they need to get back to being the more physical team, being the more imposing team defensively. They probably need low scoring games. But the thing about low scoring games is that you still have to end up scoring more than the other team. You still need quality, productive, polished, successful offensive possessions in high pressure situations. And like you said, South Carolina has the talent, they have the players, they have the shot makers, they have it. What they do or don't do in the tournament, I think will start up maybe more of a conversation, maybe not a full-on indictment, but at least a conversation about their system and how they play. Because I do think last year what they had, Camilla 6'7", the talent, the depth, it was just overwhelming. And they've put together these great, complete, dominant rosters under Dawn Staley. But that system may be challenged this year more than it has been before. Especially with, again, their freshman is leading them in scoring and could be argued as their best player, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. Sure. But it's not like she's going to go out there and dominate people. So unless they can get back to looking like a dominant team against the other great teams, I think they're in trouble of making the Final Four.
I mean, to your point, we beat Arkansas tonight, 55-95. Joyce Edwards led the team in scoring, but I mean, it's Arkansas. Raven Johnson hit one shot tonight, and as did Tahina Paopao. So like something has to give. Like, yeah, it's cool that Joyce Edwards had 18 and Malaysia had 15. Bree Hall had 14, which is nice to see. But again, like when Raven Johnson and Tahina Paopao are combined 2 of 12 from the field, or 2 of 11, or whatever it was, that's not a recipe for success. And there's no amount of depth that is going to overcome just an inability to be successful at the top. Like,
well, I mean, depth I think is what saves them, because it's like in those games, if Raven's not hitting a shot, Malaysia might hit a shot. Tessa Johnson might be hitting shots. Bree Hall might be hitting shots. So that's where I trust their depth to make up for times when they might be struggling.
But we're not going to them in the big moments. Like that's what I mean when I say that.
When you say going to them, that's a deeper conversation about their system. Because I was even going to say, you talk about Raven, she didn't hit shots. Someone didn't hit shots. When you think of South Carolina, are you thinking guard play? No, you're thinking their system is inside play, bigs, high, low, paint touches, but they don't play. They're not playing. You're not saying they're playing through Chloe Kitts. She's not a player you play through. No. She's good, but she's part of the system. Like, you're not playing through Joyce Edwards, even Ashlyn Watkins. Like, you're not playing through her. Yeah. They don't have players you play through. And look, it's worked. It's they've won championships. Like, it's fine, but it's gotten to the point where it looks like that might become more of a challenge for them, because like when you think South Carolina, you're not thinking about tremendous guard play. And even how you said ball movement, I don't think of great ball movement when I think
it's not great, but it's bad this year. Like it wasn't this bad last year. Like it looked better.
The reason why it's bad because they're not scoring. They don't have someone to throw the ball to that just gets layups.
You're right.
It's not like it's not like a ball. I don't think ball movement when I think South Carolina. I think high, low, throw it inside, get a layup, get layup.
But at what point? I mean, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm coming off as questioning the great Dawn Staley, because I would never, especially not during Black History Month. But what I'm saying is, like, yes, we don't think of great guard play for South Carolina. You wouldn't, right? But when you look at the construction of this roster, right? when you look at the litany of talented guards and talented forwards that they have and the lack of size, would it not make sense to alter the way in which we approach the basketball game if the roster's not the same? This would be completely different if Chloe Kitts was a 6'7" monster. And if she was polished and had footwork and can do all that stuff. She's not. It would be different if Sanaya Fagan was a 6'7" monster with polished footwork and a monster and a physical presence, but she's not. It'd be different if this team had Lauren Betts and the system wasn't working, or if they had a dominant big and the system wasn't working. But this system of the high-low and the physical play down low, it's not working because there's not someone on the team to do that stuff. So like what I'm saying is, and what my big gripe is, if you will, is, and why I'm harping so much on the lackluster and inconsistent play that we've been getting from our guards is like, at what point do we decide? Kind of like the exact same question I had for Gino last week about Sarah Strong. At what point do we decide as a basketball team, we're not winning a national championship this season off the strength of a 6'7" monster because we don't have that. Why don't we retool this and figure out a way to make this work with what we have? And if we're so in need of having that, then let's go get that for next season, because we don't have it this season. What we have is guards in Raven Johnson and Tahina Paopao and Malaysia Fawali and Tessa Johnson, who are really good, who you and I both said at the beginning of the season should be the best guard group in the country. And they've looked like anything but that this season. What we have are reliable forwards and wings that should be able to make a meaningful impact on the game. And the only one that seems to be doing so consistently is Joyce Edwards. And again, no disrespect to Joyce Edwards, but I will say it. If Joyce Edwards is our best player, we have a problem, because she shouldn't be the best player on this team. There are talented players, whether it's Malaysia Fawali or, more senior players with more experience like Raven Johnson or Tahina Paopao, who should be leading this team and driving some sort of identity for this team. And so I think at the end of the day, the fact that Joyce Edwards is leading this team in scoring, and the fact that she is being considered by some people as our best player, I think that's even more concerning when you talk about being this close to the tournament and having an identity, which is why, again, I said the only reason why I even have faith that they can get to the Final Four is because I've seen Dawn Staley find a way to turn this team around when it seems like they're approaching an insurmountable hill. The only thing is, this one seems to be much more insurmountable than the hills of the past couple of seasons. And that's why I'm harping so much on the guard play, because it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't, the guard play shouldn't be this inconsistent, especially when the play down low is also not consistently hitting where it used to hit in years past. And I think that's the part that I'm like struggling back and forth, because you're right. South Carolina is not known for anything other than high low and down low play, but that's not able to work this season. So like, the guards got to step up. That would be the only logical solution to me in my mind. Okay, well, this is not working. Something else has to give, and it's just not. And that's why I've been harping so much on the guard play this season.
Yeah. Rebounding and defense, like their identity is so much in, that stuff, as opposed to like ball movement, passing, 3-point shooting. And you said their rebounding numbers are down. I brought up their assists last year. They're outside the top 30 in assists, which again, doesn't surprise me that much, because I don't know if they probably had more assists before, because it could have been dump it down layups. Like, they were getting layups, so they probably gave them a little bit more assists. But that's the things you're talking about is why I think they're in trouble of even making the Final Four. We trust Dawn Staley. I think like, even when you talk about Raven and them, like, they have been there. So when we get to these games, they know how to win these games. So I think how these games look, how they win or how they lose, will create some kind of conversation going forward about, not to say they have to change things up or change the way they play, but I do think, Dawn is a C. Vivian Stringer disciple. And I know all about Coach Stringer. I grew up watching her coach at Rutgers, and she was defense, the 55 press. She's a Stringer disciple, and so that style is what Dawn hangs her hat on, and she's won national championships with it, with these amazing rosters. So it'll be interesting going forward how that style, holds up in a championship setting, and how they can continue to build the kind of rosters that it can complement, because they've got the players. Malaysia Full Wiley, man. I want to see what she does in this, in this tournament. I want to see if now is the time, because I made the prediction kind of last year that they would need more from her. I think that'll more so come to fruition this year. They will probably need some special games and moments from her, I think, to get themselves back to the Final Four.